Hi everyone, it's Adrian from Fame Consulting. I am here today with some facts and just things that you need to consider when you're picking the type of entity that you're creating. I get this question all the time. I actually was like on a call with a client today walking through this. So I said, you know what, this is a perfect time to share this information. So S corps versus LLCs. So this is a question, like I said, I get all the time. So what is an S corp? What is an LLC? So an S corp is a type of entity that you can form at the state level. It normally has 100 or fewer owners. So if this is a company that you want to go public and have thousands of shareholders, an S corp is not for you. S corp is considered closely held, meaning that they're fewer than 100 or fewer in owners, right? So the shareholders. Now, it's also a pass-through entity, meaning that the shareholders report the income from the business directly on their personal taxes. So with that, when it's tax time, what you get is called a K1. So a K1 is virtually the owner's equivalent of a W-2. When you're an employee, you get a W-2. When you're an owner, you get a K1. All right. So an S corp can be formed at the state level, and then when you register for your EIN, you tell the IRS, hey, I'm an S corp, so on and so forth. Good. Now, an LLC is a little bit different. I personally like to call an LLC a type of hybrid entity because it is also formed at the state level, but when you get to the IRS level, there are a few different options that you have. So in order to create an LLC, you will file with the state, whichever state it is that you'd like to form your entity. You'll file articles of organization. And then when you go to the IRS, you'll initially register. You'll say how many owners you have. If you have more than one owner, it'll default to partnership tax treatment, meaning that you'll be filing a form 1065. So 2 or more, it's a partnership. If it's a single member LLC, meaning there's only one owner, they treat you like a sole proprietorship. So you will actually report, your income and activities related to that single member LLC on your personal tax return on Schedule C. So yeah, you'll register with the IRS, you'll get your EIN, you'll tell them if it's 2 or more owners, one single member LLC, so on and so forth. Now, after you get your initial EIN letter, there are actually some special things that you can do afterwards if you are an LLC. This does not apply to an S corp. So S corps don't get to tell the IRS, this is how you should tax me, but LLCs do. So if you're an LLC, you can tell the IRS, hey, I'm an LLC, but actually I don't want you to tax me like a sole proprietorship or a partnership, my default classification. Tax me like a corporation. So when does being taxed like a corporation make sense? That makes sense if your personal taxes are in a tax bracket that's higher than 21%. Corporations currently are being taxed at a rate of 21% flat. So that might make sense for you, or there might be some other situations where that might make sense. Another option to tell the IRS is, hey, tax me like an S corp. So if you decide that you want to become an S corp, you actually have to file an additional form, which is called the 2553 form, where you make the election to be taxed as an S corp. Now, why would you do that if you created an LLC? You could simply just, create an S corp instead. Well, some people just want the flexibility in an LLC. It depends on each state. Every state is different. There are different rules that apply. But a lot of people say, let me be an LLC first. It's pretty simple to create. And then I'll make an election to be an S corp. S corps, when you make that election, the reason why people do that is because your default classification as either being taxed as a partnership or a sole proprietorship, you're subject to what's called self-employment tax, which is about 15%. It's comprised of Social Security and Medicaid. So that's an extra 15% on the profits that you are making through this business. And there's a whole calculation that goes into that. That'll be a separate video. But just to keep it light and keep it simple, you are subject to self-employment tax, that extra 15%. if you make the S Corp election, you are not subject to the self-employment tax on your earnings, but the IRS does have a caveat where you're supposed to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And I always use this example. A reasonable salary is relative to your industry, your field, and then also the operations of your business. If you are generating, 10,000 of profits and you pay yourself 1,000, that might be reasonable. But if you're making $1 million and you pay yourself $1,000, the IRS is not going to consider that reasonable. So just some things to think about. Also, especially if you're going to go the S Corp route, once you've already formed your LLC, you have 75 days after you form the LLC to make a timely S Corp election. If you miss that 75 days, you can still make a late election and file the paperwork with the IRS, but then it's up to their discretion. If they'll accept the late election for the current year, they may say that, okay, you made a late election, but next year it'll take effect. So just some things to think about. If you are thinking about creating an LLC, maybe because you want to invest in real estate, you have a side hustle that you want to make your main hustle one day. You just want some legal protection for whatever activities that you're creating. Maybe you're already a sole proprietorship and you're realizing, hey, I don't have any legal protections. One, always speak to an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I'm not providing legal advice. But what I will say is, after you consult with your attorney, you may want to get with me to then actually do the paperwork to file the entity and create that for you. So as part of our services for Fame, we do the paperwork for entity formations. So just some tips and tricks, some things to think about whenever you are wondering which way should I go? Should I go the whole traditional S Corp route and file that paperwork with the state, or should I go and create an LLC and then make a special tax election? Another thing with LLCs that you want to check is what state are you forming this entity in? And I can't say it's just for LLCs. This is really whenever you're creating any type of entity. You want to understand the laws that will be applicable to you. And it's good to know those things upfront as opposed to on the back end. So for LLCs, another thing you want to check out are what are the state compliance requirements. Some states have annual reports that are due. They can be pretty costly depending on the state. Some states, the annual report is $300 to do the filing every single year. And some of them are cheaper, like New York, where it's a biannual report and it's $9 every other year. So a lot of people look at the sticker price of, okay, what is it now to file the paperwork today? But you do want to also understand what are the ongoing compliance costs that I will have. So if I'm in a state where it's $300 every year versus New York where it's every other year, even though New York's fee is a little higher to initially file it, the ongoing cost is cheaper. So just something else that you should kind of consider. So you always want to check what's the ongoing state compliance fees associated to the entity, and then also what are the tax, are there any minimum taxes that you have to pay for the LLC? And just check in to see what those rules are. If you're ever wondering, hey, I'm thinking about making an LLC in New Mexico or in Florida or, Montana or New York or New Jersey, you can always reach out to me and I can help you with figuring out what the rules are in that particular jurisdiction. So I'm going to stop here and I will check in again next week. So again, if you needed to reach me, you can always find me on social media, Fame Consulting, and I'll also share my calendar link below this video so that you can, schedule an appointment if you need some one-on-one time. So thanks for stopping by and I will see you next week.